It's great being outdoors and having a good time. Playing with friends, or even by yourself, is fun. But good times can turn into not-so-good times if you're not careful.
It was a great morning, so I went out riding on my bike. It was terrific. I mean, it was warm and everything. What I didn't know was that the bike path wasn't so perfect. I don't know exactly what happened. I must have hit something, and over I went. At first, I didn't think anything was wrong. Then I felt it. My arm was stinging. Boy, did it hurt. I had rubbed some of my skin off. It was kind of bloody, and there was dirt all over it.
Jimmy had an abrasion. That's when the outside layers of skin are damaged or rubbed off. Let's examine a section of an arm and see what skin really looks like. This is a drawing of your skin. You see, you have outside layers of skin and inside layers. When the outside layers rub off, tiny blood vessels break and make your arm red and sometimes bleed. The wound isn't serious, but it does hurt. Fortunately, Jimmy knew what to do.
The school nurse had talked to us about emergencies like this. She said the best way to clean yourself is with plain soap and water. I could pat it dry with something that's clean, like a paper towel or cloth. I didn't have a clean towel, so I let it dry in the air. Next, I went to a grown-up who could help me. The park supervisor examined my arm. She told me that I had done the right thing by washing it off with soap and water. She also said that if I didn't have any soap, I could have washed it with plain water. Then she covered the skin spots with clean bandages. It still hurt a little bit, but I found out it wasn't as bad as it looked. It felt okay, so I got back on my bike. Only this time I would be a lot more careful.
Let's take another look at what happened to Jimmy and what to do if the same thing happens to you. His bike fell over, and he landed on his arm. This is called an abrasion. You might say he has a skinned arm. That's when the outside layers of skin rub off, and your arm turns red or bleeds a little. The best way to clean this or any other wound is with plain soap and water. Pat the wound dry with something you know is clean. If you don't have a clean towel or cloth, let it dry in the air. Go to a responsible adult and let that person help you. Cover the skinned area with a clean bandage. There, it's as simple as that. Remember, if you happen to be alone when you hurt yourself, you can do the same thing. Of course, it's easier if you're careful and prevent accidents, but they do happen.
There I was, cutting and pasting, when all of a sudden I looked down and saw that I had cut myself on some paper. At first I got scared because of the blood. Then I remembered what to do. I pressed my finger right down on top of the cut to stop the bleeding. If I had a clean towel or napkin, I could have used that too. Then I went to a nearby water fountain and washed it off right away. I didn't have any soap, but I remembered that plain water is okay. It sure looked like a lot of bleeding, but it really wasn't. After I cleaned it up, I kept my hand and arm raised. That helped slow down the bleeding. Then I went over to my teacher and told him what happened. He had a first aid kit, And even though it wasn't bleeding anymore, he put on a bandage. He said that was to keep it clean and help protect it.
Now you know what to do when you cut yourself. The best way to stop bleeding is by direct pressure, pressing right on the cut. Go to the nearest source of water and wash the cut. If it's a cut on your hand or arm, keep it raised. If it's somewhere else, keep on the pressure. That helps slow the flow of blood. In this or any other accident or injury, make sure you tell someone who can help you. Even when the bleeding has stopped, cover the cut with a light bandage to protect it until it heals properly. Now you know what to do if you skin or cut yourself. Just remember, as long as you know what to do, there's no need to be frightened. Games, all kinds of games, is a good, healthy activity. It's a time to be together with your friends. And it's even better if you know how to play safely. You know, accidents can happen at any time. Sure, it's better if you can prevent an accident from happening, but sometimes they do occur. In this film strip, you're going to find out what to do if you do get hurt.
My name is Dan, and I was playing basketball in the park with my friend Susie. She's pretty good. Matter of fact, she usually makes more baskets than I do. We were playing pretty hard, and Susie was ahead of me by one basket. Finally, I saw my chance, and I threw the ball. I just knew it would go through the basket. I really threw it hard because I wanted to score. Just then, I looked up to see if the ball had gone through. The ball hit me right in the nose. For a minute, I didn't feel a thing. Then I saw the blood. It looked like an awful lot.
A nosebleed usually happens when you injure the soft tissue inside the nose. Let's take a look at your nose. This is a diagram which shows the different parts. At the top part, there's a bone. Put your finger on your nose just below your eyes. You can feel that it's hard. The tip of your nose and the middle is made of a tough tissue called cartilage. The rest of your nose is made up of soft tissue, which is filled with tiny blood vessels. If your nose is hit, these tiny blood vessels may break. That's what causes nosebleeds. Nosebleeds can also be caused by blowing your nose too hard or doing other things which could injure the soft tissue.
At first, I didn't know what to do, but Susie said she knew what to do. She learned about nosebleeds in her class. Well, there wasn't anything I could do, so I listened to her. She said the first thing is to sit down. So she took me over to a park bench. My nose was still bleeding, and I was getting worried. It might look like a lot of blood, Susie said, but she learned that it only looks that way. I had to pinch the soft part of my nose together and breathe through my mouth. Then Susie said to lean forward, all the way forward. I stayed that way for a few minutes, and the bleeding actually stopped.
Another step you can take if you're at home is to wrap some ice in a cloth. Place the cloth on the bridge of your nose. The cold helps stop the bleeding. Now let's see what happened with Dan's bloody nose.
Just about the time the bleeding stopped, my dad showed up and saw what happened. He was glad that Susie knew what to do in case of a nosebleed, and I was too. It's really interesting. As soon as Susie explained what to do, I wasn't scared anymore.
Not being frightened. That's what this is all about. Knowing what to do in case you have an accident. Let's take another look at what happened. How Susie helped Dan. And how you can help yourself if you get a nosebleed. Dan and Susie were playing a game of basketball at the park. Dan threw the ball hard at the basket, but it missed. Instead, it slammed against the backboard and bounced right back. Dan didn't see the ball coming, and it smacked him right on the nose. When he looked down at his hand, it was covered with blood. He had a bloody nose. Remember, a nosebleed usually happens when you injure the soft tissue inside the nose. Your nose is made up of bone at the top, a tough tissue called cartilage, and the soft tissue filled with tiny blood vessels that may break if your nose is hit, and that causes nosebleeds. A nosebleed can also start if you blow your nose too hard or do something else to injure the soft tissue. However it happens, the first thing you should do is sit down. Pinch the soft part of your nose together with your fingers. Then lean all the way forward and keep pinching your nose. In just a few minutes, the bleeding will stop. If you're at home, you can put some ice wrapped in a cloth on the bridge of your nose. That will also help it stop bleeding. No matter what kind of injury you have, always tell your father, mother, teacher, or other adult what happened. Don't keep accidents a secret. You should always know who is taking care of you and where that person is, whether at school, in the park, or at home. When you know what to expect and how to take care of yourself, you'll feel a lot safer whenever and wherever you play. Having a good time is important. It's always a good idea to do things safely. Sometimes, though, we can't avoid accidents. They just happen when we least expect them. For instance, Ruth and her mother were out on a picnic one weekend.
My mom and I decided to have our lunch in the park one Saturday. It was terrific. She works all week, and we don't have that much time to spend together. But when we do, it's really nice. I mean, she thinks of great things to do. Anyway, it was nice and warm, and the flowers were so pretty that I thought I'd take a walk. Of course, I asked permission to go, and she said I should stay where she could see me. The flowers were bright and yellow. They smelled terrific. The bees were flying from one blossom to another. I knew if I didn't bother them, they wouldn't bother me. I saw this one big flower, and I reached down to smell it. Boy, was I surprised. There must have been a bee on the branch. Ow! It stung me right on the arm. Did it hurt? I must have knocked the bee off when it stung me. Ouch! It smarted something awful. When I looked down on the ground, I saw the bee. It sure was big. My mother was kind of far away, and I don't know if she saw what happened, but I knew what to do. I headed for the nearest cold water. My teacher had told us what to do in case we ever got stung. I was sure glad I didn't miss that lesson. It still hurt a lot, but I knew that I didn't have too much to worry about. I put cold water on the spot where the stinger went in. The pain began to go away. My My mom must have missed me, and she saw me standing by the water fountain. Only I wasn't drinking, so she knew something was wrong. She came right over and took a look at my arm. She said the stinger was still there and she'd have to get it out. She told me to be very still because she had to flick the whole stinger out. She got it out, and in one piece. Then she told me that if I ever get a bee sting when I'm alone, I shouldn't try to remove the stinger by myself. I should always find a grown-up that I know, or whoever's supposed to be responsible for me, to take the stinger out.
This is a drawing of a bee. You can see the stinger on the rear part of the insect. Bees use their stingers only for self-defense. The stinger itself has many barbs or hooks on it. When the bee stings, the barbs hold tight. Usually the bee loses it after the sting. At the top of the stinger, you see a small round part. That's the venom sac. It holds the poison which makes the sting hurt. When the stinger is removed, make sure the venom sac is not squeezed, or it will hurt even worse. That's why it should only be removed by someone who knows what they're doing.
After the stinger came out, we bathed the spot once more. I'm glad my mother was there to help, but I could have done it myself, except for taking out the stinger.
Bee stings hurt a lot, and so do other insect bites. Let's take another look at what happened to Ruth and how she helped herself. Remember, you can do the same thing if you get stung or bitten. Some people get very sick from bee stings. If you or a friend find it hard to breathe or the pain doesn't go away, tell an adult and get to a doctor right away. Ruth and her mother were having a nice picnic when Ruth decided to take a look at the flowers growing nearby. Everything was blooming and the bees flew around her. She was careful not to disturb the insects. Unfortunately, she wasn't careful enough. And while looking at the flowers, didn't see one bee on the branch she was holding. The bee attacked and stung her. She knocked it off, but it was too late. The bee had done its work, and Ruth's arm hurt. She knew that she had to get something cold on the spot that was stung, so she headed for the nearest source of water. Ruth held her arm under the cold water, and that made it feel much better. Her mother saw something was wrong and came right over. Her mother carefully removed the stinger, making sure not to squeeze the venom sac. The venom sac is the small round part at the top of the stinger which contains the poison. Once it was out, Ruth felt much better, but there was one more thing to do. She had to bathe the spot in cold water once more. That took more of the pain away and would prevent the spot from swelling too much. If Ruth had been by herself, she could have done the very same thing, and so could you. The only thing you should never do is try to remove the stinger by yourself. Get an adult to help you. Remember, if you're stung or bitten by any kind of bug, a bee, spider, ant, anything, tell an adult right away so they can help you. Some people get very sick from stings or bites. They should get to a doctor immediately. Your mother, father, teacher, babysitter, or whoever's supposed to be looking out for you should know where you are, and you should know where they are. When you know how to take care of yourself in an emergency, you'll feel safer and understand there's no reason to be afraid.